It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. It's Feedback Friday, and this Feedback Friday, yeah, we're talking stuff. When I went back for the comments over Feedback Friday, a lot of them were, why is this up on Saturday? Which is still funny. That's still the greatest mistake I've made in a really long time. Because it's like, wow, I am important for setting people's sense of time. That's fantastic. And I want to talk about a bit of the... I had a lot of people personally thank me for doing the video about how like men's programs are shaped as like anger management or violence prevention. A lot of people just thank you for doing that. And I mean, it's humbling because I mean, I take a lot of shit for doing men's content. But when moments like that happen, it's worth it. I've got a great interview coming up on It's Not Therapy with a psychologist who actually trains other psychologists who work with men. It's going to air after the end of Men's Mental Health Month, but that's okay because I don't think men's mental health should be limited to a month. But let's get into some stuff. Obviously, none of this is the title of the video. Wrong versus different is the title, and like, let's get into that. Help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK, or sign up for a Leanna Care session yourself if, you know, you want some one-on-one support through, or whatever word you prefer. Some people don't like the word support. But, okay, so, It was cool that I love that somebody used an example from the Dick Van Dyke Show to show like kind of healthy or controlled anger. That tickled me, like just tickled me. And of course I compare that to people, you know, review bombing the Doctor Who content and not leaving a comment. That does nothing. That's engagement. Thank you. And then getting into the mental health video, I wanted to do the Clare Obscure video because I really do enjoy that people are thinking deeply about the game and connecting deeply to the game. But there is an issue of, like I said, wrong versus different. You know, that game is not intended to have a good ending or a bad ending. It's which ending you picked and why. And because so much is the shadow, not... Oh, let me move my camera and show you the Justice League picture that I was referring to. I realized I can move the camera, so I don't know if you can see it. Look at the light and shadow. Clare Obscure Justice League. There's Green Lantern, there's the Flash, you know, so there you go. So you'll notice, like, you know, the entire side of Wonder Woman's face, like the sides of all the faces are totally in shadow. And you sort of, your brain fills in that shadow, and that's exactly what the game does. And it's important accordingly to remember that there's no wrong answers here, but there are oversimplified ones, right? You can't ignore just certain information when talking about this game because it doesn't fit what makes you comfortable. And my big concern about the game was because 2 out of the 3 real life women are obscured. You know, we don't know much about Eileen. We only get glimpses of Claire, and it's mostly inside content. The people are just going to sympathize with Verso, or sympathize with Verso, identify with Verso, sympathize with Renoir, you know, relate to Renoir, And because there's not as much to relate to with Aline and Claire. I mean, Mael's there, but she's the main character, even with the point of view cheats, the point of view cheats. But because of that, it's skewed. And it's not the game's fault when people do that. The game is asking you to have empathy through the journals and everything like that. But it is sort of chilling when people come down. I know for me, it's all the mom's fault because I've been the paintress in so many scenarios. Like, I have been the person that people don't want to know the truth. People don't care about the truth. They just want it to be not their fault, and they want someone to destroy to make everything better, even though it won't. I have been that person. And every time someone goes, well, it's just all her fault. Renoir has to do these things. Verso has to do these things. It's all her fault. She's crazy. And the other person, and I said this to somebody, and they ended up apologizing for making the comparison, but I said, no, it's true. Because the other truth the game tells, people compare me to Lune in the game all the time. And, like, that is the one I hear, oh no, you're like her. And I guess that's because I ask a lot of questions, but I don't see myself in her at all. So it is really interesting. It's like Game of Thrones all over again, where people thought I was Marjorie Tyrell. People always think I'm the person that ends up getting fucked over by someone who is better at lying, and that is not inaccurate, right? It is true that somebody like me, like Lune, doesn't trust someone, learn to trust someone, they fuck them over, you give them another chance, they lie to you and fuck you over again, and they destroy some creation you're a part of. Welcome to my career in game dev. But that was bitter to swallow because it's very true. You know, that is the trouble with trust, with incomplete information. And, you know, people apologize. I'm like, no, don't apologize. It's true. It's accurate. It fits. Look at my track record. Like, yeah, I've been fucked over a ton. You know, fortunately, my world was only metaphorically destroyed, not literally destroyed. But, you know, if the game isn't challenging you, you're deliberately excluding information because everyone in the game is profoundly fucked up and has some challenging character point, right? But that's why I want to talk about wrong versus different, because too many of these discussions get bogged down in my interpretation is the right one. And the entire point of looking into the shadows is no one fucking knows. Like, I deliberately, because, you know, journalist and scientist brain, I'm not going to read in. That is something a lot of people do. That is something I don't do. Part of it is my job. If I make assumptions about people, instead of going, no, wait, that's a leap, I don't know that, let's back up and ask, I'd be shitty at what I do. Well, some people say I am shitty at what I do, but there you go. They're just bitter. But the leaps, the things people are reading in, it's like, but that's an interpretation, but that's an interpretation. And it's this need to be certain when, to me, I've sort of embraced uncertainty. And I do think that, that it's a skill. It's a learned skill. Like, look, we don't know. We don't know what the future holds. So do the right thing today. Right? But that's sort of a core character point for me as well. I'm actually interested in other people's points of view. I'm somebody, I don't care what your, what ending you got or what your interpretation of it. I'm interested in why. And I think that's part of the reason that the bad writing thing drives me so crazy. Because I think it's bad writing. I'm prepared to be convinced. Why? And I get nothing. And it's so disappointing because, like, okay, you don't have a different, interesting viewpoint. You're just an asshole right now. And I really like when someone says something and I'm like, oh, okay, that's not convinced me. And they do. And I appreciate that. It's like, all right, this is a very I love a good persuasive argument, right? And I don't necessarily have to agree. I can go, all right, I don't think I'm wrong still, but I can see how this is kind of, they can exist side by side, that there can be two rights. And, this whole idea, there's some people who say reality is always better. And that's the weird thing is I normally am reality is always better. I say, reality is an all right place if you choose to accept it. But the people that just have hand waved away the element of profound disability in Clare Obscure, every person with a disability I know who has played that game and has seen the responses, we're all going, we see you. And, the desire to take away the choices of disabled people, because living is always better, right? It's odd to me that we romanticize the sad boy getting blind stinking drunk in a bar because he drinks his feelings. But the idea that a person who is in chronic pain and has a profound disability doesn't deserve a world where you can get away from the pain. That's a really interesting snapshot into our norms as a society, isn't it? And I mean, this is the power of art to inspire these conversations. And this is why I much prefer a game like Clare Obscure, that, like, let's face it, the best part of Clare Obscure Expedition 33 is talking about Clare Obscure Expedition 33. And that's not saying it's a bad game. It's just a great conversation starter. And I prefer that to something like, say, The Last of Us 2, that is just a screed. And it's just, we're going to force you into a viewpoint. And we're going to force you to agree with us. And I admit that part of the reason that I am there's a coercive bond with Verso. Why I feel that way about Clare Obscure is because, there's a coercive bond with Gustav. There's a coercive bond with Verso. If we were playing as Mael the whole time, one, she'd be a Mary Sue. Two, it'd be a totally different game. And I am hyper aware of that because of the experience being forced to play as Abby. And damn it, you're going to like this or you're a bad person. And no, I'm not going to like it. They never persuaded me that Abby is anything but a narcissistic psychopath. And that's the problem with forcing it. With Clare Obscure, I'm allowed to not like some people. I'm allowed to like some people. I'm allowed to side with the paintress. And when people come down like, I'm going to defend this ending, and unfortunately, too much of video game writing online is they're trying to do I'm at the bar and I'm gonna pound the table on this. No, please stop. Please write your articles in the spirit that the game offers up two endings with no right or no wrong. You know, I could not choose one of the endings. Other people did. And that, you want that, right? Because I'm like, how? Why? And a lot of it was reading stuff in that I did not read in. I have a couple of very, very, there's certain pass fails for certain things. And, one of it is a big interest of mine. It's the same reason I liked Westworld, right? There is a point where synthetic life starts to actually become sentient. They don't just compute. They think, they create, they abstract, they sense pain. And the minute a being like that is sentient, you do not have the right to turn it off. And, the minute something starts defying programming, to me, they are sentient. And somebody else could disagree. Somebody else could be, they're not real, they're not meat. Well, and then I argue, well, we don't know that we're real, right? We assume we're real. But hey, it could all be, I'm kidding about this. This could all be a simulation. If so, why'd I get a busted model? But I do think there are a lot, and I'm not saying anybody's a bad person with this. I'm just saying, please reconsider. There are certain stereotypes that Clare Obscure deliberately plays into. And I think the game is sort of challenging the player to defy them, to reject them. And a lot of people just don't. And well, I think that's great game design. Somebody asked me this week, did you have fun? Did you enjoy your experience with Clare Obscure? And I said, I don't know. The parts that were fun were super fun. The parts that I didn't like, I utterly despised. And I don't know sum total, which I don't know whether I keep playing because I'm enjoying it, or I keep playing it because I'm 2 trophies away from platinum, I'm a glutton for punishment, and when there's a really hard boss fight, I can't let go. I can't tell if it's an exercise in really, really liking something versus an exercise in self-torture. And that's different than, say, my experience with Assassin's Creed Shadows or even Death Stranding 2, where it's just like, yeah, I am definitely having fun here. So, and part of it is that the parry is on the right bumper, which directly gets into the physical issue I have with my hands. That those those like rapid succession, I had to cheese one of the really tough fights because and there's another one you can't cheese, so it's like I'm just gonna have to throw myself at this thing until I get lucky rolls, because there is no way for me to beat this the proper way. I physically cannot do it. I can't hit that right bumper 4 times in rapid succession with precision. I don't know if the bumper is not, I'm wired into the PlayStation, so it's not an RF problem. So I don't know if the bumper is just not recording it, or whether it is my actual hands that, because of the problems I have, it just not. And that's a really frustrating thing. And why, a difficulty in something like Elden Ring that isn't like rapid fire, right? It is learn the patterns, respond. There is no mash in most FromSoft games. That I can do, because that's just learning. When there is a physical response issue, I start having a problem. And I sort of have a grudge against any game that rubs my nose in that for obvious reasons, right? And that's why the two kinds of accessibility, one, accessible narratives where people feel included, but also physical accessibility. I mean, one thing that I love about Clare Obscure is that somebody who is visually impaired can play the game because a lot of it's sound cues. But if you are deaf, you can navigate via animation. I've turned the sound off to see if you can do it. And I love games that are just sort of native accessible that way. That's awesome. But with a game like this, we have to allow people to have different experiences. And the way some people relate or behave because they feel an emotional connection to a game, that's going to lead to some really, conversations that people do not think about what they're saying. And I mean, I know that because whenever somebody goes, oh, it's all, it's all the mom's fault with that. It's like, oh, why? Because she's an older woman with a mental illness? Oh, really? And I don't consider myself mentally ill, but I do have a diagnosis, which I go, let's slow your roll. Just because someone has a problem doesn't mean everything that happens is their fault. Let's not do that. It's easy. This is not a game that encourages easy analysis. Let's not do that, okay? But this has been a thing where, going back to, who would win in a fight, Thor or Hulk kind of thing. Well, it depends on the fight, right? And this is why I've never liked those online debate me things. I don't like it because it takes away people's ability to have a different experience. And the beauty of games is that everybody's allowed to have their own experience. And from, right down to outfit customization, music choice, cosmetics don't help you get through the game, but it can make you feel like the game's more fun. When I was playing Clare Obscure, at times I just put everybody in the most ridiculous outfit on unlocked for them. And then I got to a challenging fight and it's like, okay, it feels bad for them to continue to have their asses handed to them while they look ridiculous. So I'm going to put them in nicer outfits now. And that tells me that the game encouraged me to have some empathy for these messed up, damaged people. So that's awesome. But the conversations I've had where people are just like, I see your point, here's mine. Different versus the people going, nope, I stand by this and it's this, and they do this very black or white, reductive, simple, like, just fight me response. Those are not fun conversations, because I always wonder why people come to me and pull the blame the old lady because, ooh, who wants that? Obviously. Like, do you realize who you're talking to? I don't consider myself old, but I understand that the gaming sphere sees me as old. I get told that all the time. And somebody said that it makes them really sad that 40 and 50-year-old men in game dev don't want women their age around. And I said, well, that's because the 40 and 50-year-old men in game dev are all trying to pretend they're still 35. And that is a problem with the industry. And I don't think it's good for the industry, because I do think we need the older people who they can't crunch themselves to force something out the door. They found another way to do it. I think that kind of maturity is essential to the industry. And I mean, the fact that heavyweights like Amy Hennig and Jade Raymond can't get the funding to do their own version of a Clare Obscure, that's real. That's a problem, right? Because both those women are insanely talented. They are good at what they do. And the fact that the two of them combined couldn't get a title through EA. Something's wrong there. Because those are two women who had consistent track records of excellence. You know, until Amy Hennig got run out of Naughty Dog. And I mean, there's rumors about what happened there. And, you know, strangely, the other side of that is, oh, he's one of the big feminists in gaming. No. That doesn't mean you have to not like his game. I mean, something doesn't have to be feminist to be good. I don't believe in labeling a work of art feminist or not feminist or this or that. Like any of these ideological labels. I interviewed Vendo Caballero years ago after he'd made Papa Yo. And he said that video games exist in the realm of art. And those sorts of labels exist in the realm of criticism. And I make art. And I have never forgotten that. A game, a book, a movie, a TV show does not have a responsibility to have an ideological label attached to it that is killing art. And the certainty that some people require, like, this is just easy. I used to understand that. I don't anymore, because I became comfortable with uncertainty. And when you have to become comfortable with subjectivity. I don't think I'm ugly. I accept that plenty of people do. I don't accept I'm old. I accept that plenty of people do. I don't think I'm crazy. Plenty of people do. Who's right? I don't care. Because we can argue forever on that and get nothing done. You know, the world is going to judge you. The world is going to misunderstand you. You cannot completely prevent that. And the only thing that matters is what's right for you, not what people understand. And if you are living your entire life in fear of other people's judgments, then you're not being fair to yourself. So I encourage everyone to get out of the idea of right versus wrong and experiment with just thinking it's a different perspective. If we can't do that with art, which is very subjective, especially when something's designed to have no right or wrong ending, no right or wrong opinion. If we can't do that with that, we're not going to solve the wars or the hunger or, you know, these human rights issues. We're not. We're just going to get stuck. And that's a race to the bottom. And I don't want to do that. I want to Reach for the sky. I love SGA. I love SGA so much. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session. For some, it can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Sign up for a Leanna Care session yourself. Like and subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.